The discovery in the ice, the Arctic was silent, covered in endless sheets of snow and ice. The wind howled across the frozen land, sharp and cold enough to cut through thick coats. Dr. Elias Morgan stood with his team, staring at a wall of ice that looked no different from the rest. Yet his instruments told him something strange was buried deep inside. The machines had been picking up signals for 3 days. At first, the scientists thought it was interference, maybe from military satellites or old equipment lost long ago. But when they moved closer, the signals grew stronger. They were not random. They were steady, repeating almost like a heartbeat trapped under the ice. Elias brushed the frost from his goggles and nodded to his assistant, Dr. Anna Patel. "It is here," he said softly. His voice trembled, though he tried to hide it. He had spent his life searching for things that others said were impossible. Now he felt he was standing on the edge of one of the greatest discoveries in human history. The team set up their drills. Metal claws bit into the frozen wall, breaking off chunks of ancient ice. For hours, the sound of drilling echoed across the lifeless Arctic plain. Some of the younger scientists joked at first, laughing about finding Viking treasure or old ships frozen from past wars. But as the drills went deeper, their laughter faded. After the 3rd hour, the drill hit something solid. Not ice, not stone. Something metallic. The vibration traveled through the ground, and even the wind seemed to pause for a moment. Anna stepped forward and brushed away the ice with her gloved hands. Her breath caught in her throat. This is not natural. What they saw was smooth, curved metal, covered in markings unlike anything they had seen before. The surface was cold, but it did not look old or rusted. It looked as if it had been placed there yesterday. The others crowded closer, their flashlights reflecting off the strange metal. Questions began flying through the air. Was it Russian? Was it some kind of secret American project from the Cold War? Or something older, much older? Elias placed his hand on the surface. It was massive, stretching far into the ice, far beyond what their lights could reach. His heart beat faster. He had studied myths and strange reports all his life. Stories of things falling from the sky, of ships that were not human. He always believed there was truth behind them. Now with his hand on the frozen metal, he knew he had been right. "Keep digging," he ordered. They worked through the night. Hours passed, the cold biting into their bones, but no one wanted to stop. Piece by piece, the ice fell away, revealing the shape of something larger than any of them had imagined, a curve like the body of a giant ship, 2 massive engines frozen in place, panels of white and gray metal, marked with strange lines of red and black. It was a ship that did not belong to Earth. By morning, a large part of it stood free from the ice. The scientists stepped back, their faces pale and silent. For once, there were no jokes, no questions. Only awe and fear. The ship's surface was scarred, as if it had crashed hard. One side was torn open, jagged metal frozen in place like a wound that never healed. The snow around it looked disturbed, cracked in strange patterns, as if the crash had shaken the very land. Anna whispered, "How long has it been here?" Elias shook his head. "Longer than our history can remember." Their equipment started to malfunction again. Radios cracked with static, even though no one was speaking. Compasses spun in circles, useless. Cameras flickered, their batteries draining faster than normal. It was as if the ship was alive, feeding on their presence, resisting their attempt to reveal it. The team tried to calm themselves, but unease spread like frost across their minds. Something about the ship felt wrong. It was too silent, too watchful, as if it knew they were there. Then came the first sound. A deep, hollow thud echoed from within the ice, from deep inside the ship's broken hull. The scientists froze. No one moved. The Arctic wind howled above them, but this sound was different. It came from within the metal, slow and heavy, like something shifting after a long sleep. "Did you hear that?" One of the younger men asked, his voice trembling. No one answered. They all had heard it. Elias tried to calm his breathing. "It could be ice breaking apart," he said. But his words did not convince even himself. Ice did not echo like that. Ice did not sound alive. The scientists decided to set up camp closer to the ship. They told themselves they would investigate further after resting. But none of them slept that night. They lay awake in their tents, listening to the wind, waiting for the sound to return. And just before dawn, it did. Another deep thud, this time followed by a low vibration that rippled through the ice. The ground beneath them seemed to breathe. Anna gripped her blanket tightly and whispered into the dark, "It is not just a ship. Something is still inside." The Arctic remained silent, but the scientists knew the truth. Their discovery was not just metal frozen in the ice. They had awakened something far greater, something that had been waiting for them. The world above was white and cold, but beneath the ice, history had just changed forever. Opening the ship. The frozen morning light fell across the buried starship like a pale hand, reaching into the shadows of its broken hull. The scientists stood before it, exhausted from the night but unable to turn away. None of them could believe what they had uncovered. Dr. Elias Morgan gave the order to set up cutting equipment. Their drills had done the job of breaking through the ice, but now they needed to open the ship itself. The metal was strange, smooth in some places, scarred in others, but it did not behave like any material they had studied before. When struck with hammers, it did not ring like steel. Instead, it gave off a dull thud as if the sound was swallowed whole. Anna Patel knelt near a jagged tear in the hull. Her gloved hand hovered just above the edge, careful not to touch it directly. "This damage," she whispered. "It looks like the ship was torn apart by force." "Not by the crash," Elias nodded. He had noticed the same thing. The metal was shredded, twisted outward in some parts as if something had burst free from the inside. He kept that thought to himself, not wishing to feed the unease already growing among the team. The cutting torches roared to life, their flames spitting against the icy air. Sparks flew as they pressed the heat against the alien hull. At first, the metal resisted, glowing faintly but refusing to break. Then slowly it began to give way, as if it allowed itself to be opened. After hours of work, the team finally carved a passage through the broken side of the ship. Elias was the first to step forward, flashlight in hand. He looked back at his team. Their faces were pale, their breaths clouds in the cold. None wanted to admit their fear, but none wanted to stay behind either. "Stay close," Elias said, and he ducked into the darkness. Inside, the air was heavy, colder than outside, yet strangely breathable. Frost clung to the walls like veins, stretching across panels of alien design. His flashlight revealed markings on the metal, symbols that looked almost like letters but twisted in ways no human language had ever used. Some parts of the ship seemed alive, with faint lines that pulsed like veins under skin. The others followed, their boots crunching on a floor coated in centuries of frost. The corridor stretched forward, lined with broken wires and panels half buried in ice. It felt less like exploring a wreck and more like stepping into the body of something ancient and sleeping. Anna shivered. "It feels like it is watching us," she murmured. They moved deeper, their light slicing through the black. In one chamber, they found seats shaped for bodies that were almost human, but larger, stronger. Straps of strange material still clung to the chairs, frozen in place. On one wall, they found a screen cracked in half, its surface dead and silent. Yet when Elias touched it, the screen flickered faintly as if some buried power still lingered. The scientists exchanged uneasy glances. None of this should have been possible after so many centuries under the ice. As they pressed further, they came across a sealed door at the end of the corridor. Unlike the others, this one was smooth, untouched by ice or damage. Their lights bounced off its silver surface, revealing faint hand-shaped markings near its edges. "Could be a control panel," Anna suggested. She reached for her scanner, but before she could use it, the markings on the door began to glow. The scientists froze. The glow spread slowly like fire crawling along paper, until the entire surface shone with a dim blue light. Then, without warning, the door shuddered and began to open. The sound was deep and grinding, echoing through the hollow corridors. Dust and frost fell from the ceiling as the ancient mechanism awoke. The team stepped back, fear racing through their veins. "Did we trigger it?" One of the men whispered. Elias stared, his heart hammering. "No," he said softly. "It triggered itself." The door slid open, revealing a chamber unlike anything they had seen. Inside were rows of pods, tall and glass-like, each one filled with frozen mist. Shapes lay within them, figures that were humanoid but not human. They were tall, armored in strange suits, their faces hidden behind masks that looked like skulls of beasts. Anna's voice broke the silence. "Stasis pods," she whispered. "They are not dead, they were—" "Sleeping." The scientists pressed closer, fear and wonder mixing in their eyes. Most of the pods were still sealed, frost hiding the details of the beings inside. But one pod was different. Its glass was cracked empty. Inside, claw marks lined the frost, deep and desperate. Elias felt the ground shift beneath him. His stomach turned cold. Something had escaped. The others noticed too. A wave of silence fell over the group. No one dared to speak, as if speaking would summon whatever had broken free. Then came the sound. From somewhere deep in the ship, far beyond the chamber, came a low creak. Not the sound of metal breaking, not the sound of ice shifting, but the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps. The team's flashlights trembled in their hands. Their breaths came quick and shallow. Elias spoke, his voice low but steady. "We are not alone in here." And as the echo of footsteps faded into silence, every member of the team understood. The ship was no longer just a discovery. It was a trap waiting to close. The awakening, the chamber was silent except for the sound of the team's breathing. Their flashlights swept across the stasis pods, catching the frost that glimmered like glass. Each pod held a figure, tall and motionless, with strange armor and unfamiliar weapons sealed beside them. The only pod that stood open loomed like a warning. Its cracked surface looked clawed from the inside, the ice torn apart as if the occupant had forced their way free. Dr. Elias Morgan tried to steady his voice. "We must stay calm. Nothing here has moved in centuries." But even as he spoke, the echo of those footsteps still lingered in his ears. He had heard them. Everyone had. Anna Patel crouched near the broken pod, her gloved fingers tracing the scratches left on the walls. They were deep, carved with unnatural strength. She glanced at Elias, her eyes wide with fear. Whatever was inside. "It is not gone." "It is awake," the others whispered among themselves. Some insisting they leave immediately, others demanding they record everything before abandoning the site. Their voices grew louder, clashing with one another until a sound silenced them all. It came from deeper inside the ship, a low hum, steady and mechanical, like a heartbeat that had suddenly returned. The floor beneath their boots vibrated faintly. Frost shook loose from the ceiling, raining down in small flakes. "Power," Elias breathed. "The ship is waking up." Panels along the walls flickered, weak lines of light crawling across the alien metal. The symbols carved into the walls began to glow, pulsing faintly as if they were veins carrying energy. The air grew warmer, though not comforting, more like standing near the breath of a predator. Then the pod beside the broken one hissed. A crack spread across its frosted surface. "No," Anna whispered, backing away. "It is opening." The scientists scrambled back as the glass-like cover split apart. A cloud of icy mist poured out, filling the chamber with a ghostly haze. Inside, the figure began to stir. Its chest rose and fell in slow, heavy breaths. Then with a sharp motion, it sat upright. The being's armor gleamed beneath the frost, dark and jagged, designed for war. Its hands were large, clawed, yet shaped with a strange similarity to human hands. Its head turned slowly, eyes hidden behind a mask that seemed carved from bone. One of the younger men, unable to control his fear, raised his camera to record. The sound of the click echoed far too loudly. The figure froze. Then, in a movement too fast for something just awakened, its head snapped toward them. Two faint lights glowed within the mask, eyes that burned like cold fire. The team staggered back, but Elias held his ground. His instinct screamed to run, but his mind told him to observe. He raised his hand slowly, showing he was not a threat. "We are explorers," he said carefully. "We mean no harm." The alien did not move at first. Then it rose to its full height, towering above them all. Its breath misted in the cold air, heavy and steady. Slowly it stepped down from the pod, its armored feet striking the floor with deep echoing thuds. Anna clutched Elias's arm. "We cannot stay here," she whispered. But before they could retreat, the alien tilted its head and spoke. The voice was rough, broken with centuries of silence, yet the words were clear. "Humans," the team froze. Shock washed over them. The alien knew their language. "How?" Elias stammered. "How do you know us?" The being's head turned toward him. "We fought beside you," it said, each word heavy, each pause filled with meaning. "Long ago, before your history was written." The scientists exchanged stunned looks. Could this being be telling the truth? Could humanity have fought wars beyond Earth, forgotten and erased by time? The alien took another step forward. "This ship was sanctuary. We fled, we fell, we slept, but now you have come, and the enemy will follow." The chamber shook as another pod hissed, then another, and another. The rest of the frozen figures began to stir. Mist poured out, filling the air with thick fog. The hum of the ship grew louder, as if feeding their return. Elias felt his blood run cold. He realized this was no simple discovery. They had not uncovered a relic, they had triggered a rebirth. The young man with the camera dropped it in panic. The sound of it shattering echoed across the chamber. The first alien's head snapped toward him again, the glowing eyes narrowing. "Do not fear," it growled. "Fear them." Its clawed hand pointed toward the darkness beyond the chamber, down the corridor where no human had walked yet. From that blackness came the sound again. The slow, deliberate footsteps they had heard before, only this time it was not alone. Dozens of footsteps, heavy and sharp, moving closer. The scientists huddled together, their fear overwhelming. The aliens in the pods were awakening all around them, their glowing eyes piercing the mist, and in the shadows beyond, something else was moving, something that had broken free long before they arrived. Elias whispered, his voice trembling but steady enough for his team to hear. "We must survive this, no matter what. Humanity must know." And as the ship's heartbeat thundered through the frozen corridors, the scientists realized they had stepped into a war that never truly ended. The truth beneath the ice. The sound of footsteps grew louder in the darkness. Every echo seemed to crawl under the scientist's skin. The awakened alien stood tall, its glowing eyes fixed on the corridor ahead. The others, still trapped in their pods, shifted as the ship's systems rumbled back to life. Dr. Elias Morgan gripped his flashlight tightly, though the beam shook in his hand. He forced himself to look at the armored figure before them. "What is coming?" he asked, his voice steady but low. The alien turned its masked face toward him. For a moment the chamber was silent. Then it spoke, its words slow, as if pulled from deep memory. "Hunters. They followed us. They buried us here. They never left." The team exchanged fearful glances. Anna Patel's face went pale. "Hunters?" she whispered. The alien raised its clawed hand and pressed it against the chamber wall. Symbols lit up beneath its touch, spreading across the surface like veins of fire. In the flickering glow, Elias saw images take shape. Not letters, not words, but holographic scenes. The wall revealed battles fought under alien skies. Human warriors, dressed in armor unlike anything on Earth, stood side by side with the beings now waking from their pods. Together they fought against monstrous creatures, tall, jagged, with limbs shaped like blades. Their eyes glowed with cold fire, their mouths twisted into unending screams. Anna gasped. "Those are humans," she said, pointing at the figures in the vision. "That is us," the alien's voice rumbled again. "Your kind was not born weak. You were warriors once, Deathworlders. The galaxy feared you." It paused, its glowing eyes narrowing. "But your memory was broken. Your history erased." Elias felt his throat tighten. It was impossible. Humanity's first steps into space were still dreams compared to what this being was describing. Yet the evidence was right before his eyes. The ship, the pods, the holographic battles. Had humanity once fought among the stars only to forget? The alien continued. "We came here seeking refuge. The hunters destroyed our fleet. This ship was all that remained. We hid on your world under its ice, waiting for the day we could rise again." The chamber trembled as another sound ripped through the corridor. It was not footsteps this time. It was a shriek, sharp and unnatural, echoing off the frozen metal. The walls themselves seemed to shiver. One of the scientists dropped his equipment in panic. The alien turned its glowing eyes on him. "Silence. They hear weakness," Elias steadied himself. "If these hunters are still here, then the ship was not the only thing buried." The alien nodded slowly. "The ice is their prison too. But the thaw has begun. You woke us. You woke them." The truth settled heavy on the scientists. Their discovery was not just a buried ship. It was a battlefield frozen in time, and by digging it up they had broken the seal. Another hologram lit across the walls. This time Elias saw a star map. Dozens of glowing points stretched across the dark. At the center was Earth, burning bright. Around it, lines connected to distant worlds like scars across the stars. Each point flickered with marks of battles won and lost. "You were Deathworlders," the alien repeated, "the most feared of all. But you turned away. You chose to forget. Now the galaxy believes you gone." It leaned closer, its voice low and heavy. "If they learn you still live, they will come. Not only the hunters, all of them." Anna swallowed hard. "Then what do we do? Tell no one?" Elias's mind raced. If this was true, The entire course of human history had been a lie. If the world knew, it would change everything: science, religion, politics, war. But if they kept it secret, humanity would remain blind to threats already moving under the ice. Before he could answer, the corridor shook again. A dark shadow moved within the mist. Slowly, figures emerged. Their bodies were twisted, covered in jagged armor of ice and bone. Their eyes glowed like burning coals, piercing the fog. The hunters had arrived. The alien warrior stepped forward, drawing a blade from the side of its pod. The weapon hummed with energy, alive with power. "Stay behind us," it growled. "This is not your fight." Not yet. But Elias knew the truth. The hunters had not come for the aliens alone. They had come for humanity too. As the creatures advanced, the awakened pods began to open faster. More of the tall warriors stepped free, their weapons shining in the mist. The chamber filled with the hum of alien energy and the hiss of awakening breaths. Elias looked at his team. They were terrified, but their eyes burned with something else too. Curiosity, defiance, the spark of survival. In that moment, Elias realized the alien had been right. Humans had forgotten what they once were, but deep inside, the fire still remained. The shriek of the hunters filled the chamber, and the first clash of weapons rang out. Sparks lit the darkness as alien steel met jagged claws. The war beneath the ice had begun again, and for the first time in thousands of years, humanity stood at its edge. Humanity's forgotten legacy. The frozen chamber erupted into chaos. Blades of energy clashed against claws of jagged bone, sparks flying through the mist. The alien warriors who had just awakened fought with precision and fury, their weapons cutting arcs of light through the shadows. The hunters screeched, their bodies twisting unnaturally as they surged forward in waves. The scientists huddled against the wall, their flashlights shaking. The ground trembled beneath their boots as the old war, buried for centuries, returned in full force. Dr. Elias Morgan pulled Anna Patel close to shield her from the spray of broken ice and debris. "Stay down!" he shouted, though his voice was almost lost in the roar of battle. The lead alien warrior, the one who had spoken to them, moved like a storm. Every strike of its blade sent hunters crashing into the walls, their bodies breaking with sickening cracks. Yet for each one that fell, two more appeared from the dark corridors. The ship itself seemed to pulse with life, its walls glowing brighter as if it fed on the chaos. Anna's eyes darted to Elias. "We cannot stay here. If this battle spreads..." Elias knew she was right. If the ship fully awakened, if its power reached beyond the ice, the entire Arctic could shatter. And if the hunters broke free into the world above, humanity would face a nightmare it had never known. He forced himself to stand. His body shook, but he would not let fear control him. He had come here searching for truth, and now truth had found him. Humanity was not new to the stars. They were something far older, something the galaxy had chosen to forget. "Wait," Elias said suddenly, staring at the glowing symbols still dancing across the chamber walls. "This ship, it is more than a tomb. It is a record, a warning." He rushed to the wall, brushing frost from the glowing veins of light. His gloved hands slid across the surface until he felt a pulse, a rhythm like a heartbeat. The ship responded. The holograms shifted, revealing more scenes. This time the images were not of war, but of humans standing tall among alien worlds. Leaders, warriors, explorers. Their presence was unmistakable. They had not been prey. They had been feared, respected, followed. Anna's breath caught. "Elias, they were kings of the stars." The alien warrior slashed through another hunter and turned toward Elias. "You begin to see. Your kind was not weak. You chose to forget, but the blood remembers." The words struck Elias like thunder. The blood remembers. Another shriek tore through the chamber as hunters leapt across the pods, their claws scraping sparks across the floor. One of them lunged at Anna, its jaws opening wide. Elias grabbed a broken metal rod from the floor and swung. The impact cracked through the creature's head, sending it crashing down. He stood frozen, staring at his hands. He had never fought in his life. Yet in that instant his body had moved with speed and power he could not explain. The alien warrior's glowing eyes locked onto him. He gave a slow nod. Yes, Deathworlder. Elias's heart pounded. The realization burned in him. The memory of humanity's power was not gone. It lived inside them still, waiting to be called. The battle raged. More pods burst open. More warriors joined the fight, and the hunters were forced back into the shadows. But the ship shook violently, its old wounds tearing wider. Ice cracked along the walls, water dripping from above as the frozen prison began to weaken. "We must leave," Anna cried. "The ice will not hold." Elias hesitated, staring at the walls of history, at the proof of what humanity had once been. If they fled now, this truth might be lost forever, but if they stayed, they would be buried with it. The alien warrior stepped close, towering above him. Its voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Take the knowledge. Leave the battle to us. Your kind must decide whether to remember." From its belt, the alien pulled a small crystal, glowing faintly with inner light. It pressed the crystal into Elias's hand. "This holds the record. Your people must see it, but choose carefully. The galaxy sleeps only because it believes you gone." Elias clutched the crystal, its glow warm against his palm. For the first time since stepping onto the ice, he felt the weight of destiny pressing on him. The chamber shook again, this time with explosive force. Cracks split the ceiling, snow and ice pouring in like an avalanche. The hunters screamed as the alien warriors struck them down, pushing them back into the depths of the ship. "Go," the alien roared. "The ship will not hold much longer." Elias grabbed Anna's hand and pulled her toward the exit. The rest of the team followed, stumbling through the corridors as the walls glowed brighter and brighter, like a dying star preparing to collapse. Behind them, the sound of war thundered through the ice. The clash of blades, the roars of the hunters, the cries of warriors who had been waiting centuries for this final fight. When they burst back into the frozen air, the storm had grown worse. Snow whipped around them, erasing their tracks almost as soon as they made them. They collapsed into the snow, gasping for breath, their hearts still racing. The ground beneath them trembled as the ship groaned, sinking deeper into the ice. The glow from its hull pulsed one last time before fading into silence. For a moment it was as if nothing had happened. The Arctic stretched out around them, white and empty, the storm swallowing every sound. But Elias held the crystal close. Inside its glow was proof that humanity had been more than Earth ever believed. Proof that their blood carried a forgotten fire. Proof that the galaxy had not seen the last of them. Anna looked at him, her eyes wide with fear and hope. "What do we do now?" Elias stared into the storm. He knew the answer. "We remember," he said. And with those words, the future of humanity shifted. The frozen world was silent once more, but the legacy of the Deathworlders had been awakened.